For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, alongside Connor Morrissette for instant analysis from USC's Wednesday evening practice of Cal Week. Things were back to normal today. Lincoln Riley back at practice. We were told he's battling pneumonia. He was obviously, as we talked about yesterday, on doctor's orders to work from home for USC's Monday and Tuesday practices, but he's back today. Still seems to be battling the pneumonia battle, I guess, but he's back at practice. Things were a little bit more normal today. What were your biggest takeaways?
Things just seemed happier today. It seemed like the team was really happy to get their head coach back, and that makes a whole lot of sense. Like you said, Jack, he missed the last 2 days of practice, and the USC representative who spoke with us about Riley's condition said that he's on track to speak with us tomorrow during Zoom, so we'll get another health update from him on his weekly press conference. But yeah, overall, the mood yesterday just seemed kind of weird. I think you'd agree, and today it seemed more back to normal.
Yeah, Taj Washington said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, the higher spirits the team was, at least at practice, having Lincoln Riley around. We walked in, and we walk in, and then they start the music, and it was Eminem's Without Me, so saying, guess who's back again. Obviously, talking about Lincoln Riley being back at practice. There were some other funny music choices where they were playing Lil Baby's Something to Prove. Maybe that's a key for what USC has for the rest of the season. And as we walked out, they were playing Many Men by 50 Cent, which, if you watched Lincoln Riley's press conference after the loss to Utah, was the song that Utah was blaring through the walls in their locker room. So there were some funny music choices, and I think that definitely helped with the higher spirits.
Is the Many Men thing on purpose? Did USC take that personally? Utah blaring that song in their own building? Potentially? Was it a coincidence? Don't know for sure, but certainly interesting that they chose that song, especially as we were leaving, because I think they wanted us to hear it a little bit, but maybe I could be reading too much into that.
Well, we can read into it a little further, too. If you guys aren't familiar with the song or 50 Cent's story, he was shot, and he survived, and he made the song saying, "Many men wish death upon me." Now, Lincoln Riley obviously battling pneumonia. He's back at practice. USC's taken a couple shots in a row from Notre Dame and Utah, so we'll see if they can survive and respond. But I think we're reading very far into that.
Are you an English major, Jack, reading that much into something like that? That sounds like you're writing a paper.
Maybe I'm a rap major. I don't really know. I don't think I'm either of those. But we also got to talk to offensive line coach Josh Henson. Of course, a big week for the offensive line. The first real big shuffle that we have seen with Mason Murphy starting and playing at right guard and Jarrett Kingston starting and playing at right tackle. What were your takeaways from what Coach Henson had to say?
He was really happy with how the unit looked, and how could he not be? Utah, that game, USC was much better on the offensive line than it was against Notre Dame. And he said it's going to look like this until we feel like we need to make a change again. So I anticipate this being the offensive line going forward unless there's an injury. I think the unit played well enough to battle it out the rest of the year. Talking to Mason Murphy, he said he likes pass protecting, I think, in left guard, and then run blocking at tackle better, but he was very happy to be at guard, and he just persevered so hard. And he was a guy who was from the LA area, went to high school in Orange County, and he mentioned how he was only ever going to go to USC. So when he wasn't starting, it wasn't an option transferring. He just kept working, and I think that's a big reason why he's been able to persevere and play. And Jarrett Kingston seemed happier too. It just seemed like the offensive line, with Henson too, a weight was lifted because they hadn't been playing well for a couple weeks. And credit to Henson, he solved the problem, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better. And I think USC, they have decent offensive line play after this game. I think you can say that, and it could even potentially be good to great.
Yeah, I think we all kind of thought going into the game and coming out of the Notre Dame game specifically that USC was going to try and figure out the carousel at right tackle, but it seemed like that wasn't the way they were thinking about it. They wanted to figure out right guard. Henson said they needed more power at the guard position, so that's why they wanted to shift Murphy in. And then he said it was kind of up for a battle for the right tackle spot, you would assume, between Michael Tarquin and Jarrett Kingston. Obviously, Kingston won. He said he's happy to be back at tackle. Clearly, I think there was more of a smile on his face where he's back at tackle, where he played at Washington State. There he played left tackle, now he's playing right tackle, so he said after playing guard for a bit, getting used to being back at tackle, but of course has a lot of experience there. But I thought it was interesting where they weren't figuring it out, outside in, it was more inside out. So I think it was a little bit of a reverse of what USC fans were thinking they were going to do on the line.
And I asked Henson, I didn't mean to be a smart aleck, but I said, do you wish you did this earlier? And he said, no, I don't. I just wish the first unit I went with played better. And I thought that was really interesting. There was a reason he rolled out the line that he rolled out. That group earned it in practice. He thought that group was going to play better. They just didn't. He solved the problem. Credit to him. Hindsight's 20/20, I guess, but he says even if he could go back, he wouldn't change a thing.
And also another interesting note for Murphy, he said that he was told he would be playing right guard on Monday coming out of the Notre Dame game. So it was clear, obviously, for Josh Henson coming out of that game in South Bend that he had to make a change. And of course, moving Mason Murphy to right guard was the one he ended up making in that and ended up kind of falling into dominoes for the right tackle position. We also got to talk to Caleb Williams, a couple other players today. What were some of your other biggest takeaways from practice?
Right off the bat, I asked Caleb Williams what were his emotions after losing to Utah. He said obviously sadness, disappointment, but he was asked how he responds to adversity after, and in both instances he brought up being around his family, being around people he loves, and that's how he rebounds from a loss. So it sounds like he was in good company after this defeat and not just, wallowing, is that a word, being sad by himself. So that was good to see, and his family's always in the crowd, so they could build him up. He was also asked USC almost certainly out of the national title hunt now. No two-loss team has ever made the college football playoff when it's been 4 teams like that. He said nothing's over yet, but you could see the disappointment in his face. This was a big goal for him, and he didn't talk after the game, spoke to us today. It was the first reaction we could get from him fresh after that loss, and the overwhelming sort of sense I got from him is disappointment, and how could it not be?
Yeah, and he was asked about watching that final drive by the defense sitting. He was kind of relaxed on the bench, and he said he wasn't trying to stay away. He wasn't trying to not watch the defense or anything. He was there to stay calm because we know how much these games mean to him, especially the Utah games where they lost twice last year. Basically held him out of the playoff last season, and obviously didn't win the Pac-12 championship game, but he said he was doing that to try and stay calm. I asked him specifically, what has his communication been like with Lincoln Riley this week, with Riley having pneumonia, and what the practices were like without him. He says practices are always going to be different when anyone's missing, whether it's a player or a coach, but the communication for them has been the same. It was just over the phone. So the last 2 days he was calling Lincoln after practice, talk about how practice went, talk about specific plays, and I asked him specifically about how Cliff Kingsbury and how his role has changed, and he didn't get into that part of the question, but definitely seemed that him and Riley have been communicating the same amount, just over the phone.
Which is great. Lincoln Riley, of course, sick, not being great, but it's nice that he was still able to talk, and it was just good he's back today, I think, just going back to that, because you can talk over the phone to your head coach, and I'm sure that was really good, but after a couple losses, USC needs its head coach right now, and of course if he's sick and can't be there, so be it, but I think they needed him back today. Glad he was.
Yeah, and you could definitely feel there was a different vibe at practice. There was a different feel at Howard Jones Field. Having Lincoln Riley back, the team was in much higher spirits, and we'll see how that bodes for them against Cal. Do you have any other takeaways before we wrap up instant analysis and head to Berkeley on Saturday?
Yeah, your hometown, your turf. I asked Brendan Rice, what is Lincoln Riley, even though he's been sick, his message this week, and he said, which is something that's consistently been said, everyone looks down at USC. That's what Riley always says. Love or hate USC, you're always checking the score. Rice echoed that a little bit. And then he said, people have counted us out. We're going to be back. Our script isn't written yet. Nothing's finalized. We will bounce back. He didn't guarantee anything, but it almost sounded like a guarantee that USC would play a lot better here down the stretch. So Rice seemed to believe that this team could turn things around. Now we just got to see it on the field.
Well, if that's Riley's message, maybe he's the one picking the 50 cent at practice. But it was a much higher energy day at practice today. The vibes were back to normal, at least at Howard Jones Field. But USC has a must-win game. You really can't overstate how important this game is, and obviously the rest of the games down the rest of the schedule, because there are some big ones like Washington, Oregon, and UCLA on the horizon. This is, and we kind of said this earlier in the season, this is USC's only softer game of this long back half of the season. And with the way they're playing right now, and they have been over the last couple of weeks, I'm not sure you can even fully say that about this week. So a game the Trojans have to win, but they've got their head coach back. They've got Caleb Williams, clearly still in good spirits, a motivated guy who says he wants to keep fighting on throughout the losses, and we'll see if they can come away with the victory on Saturday. That's all we've got for you guys today. Make sure you're checking out the rest of the videos here on YouTube. Interviews with Josh Henson, Caleb Williams. We'll have Lincoln Riley Zoom tomorrow, which on USCfootball.com we'll have some articles written about that. So make sure you're checking out all the content on the website. But anyways, for Connor Morrissette, I'm Jack Smith. Thank you for watching Instant Analysis. We will see you guys tomorrow on Tunnel Vision, 7 p.m.